Chapter 6 by Bus Through the Outback, Video 3 of 3. There was still gold to be found, I thought. Surely that was easier. After our reviving showers, we took a stroll through Cooper Pedy. Just when we were shopping for some groceries, there was a power outage that affected the whole town. So we were standing in this underground shop, and the darkness was so thick and impenetrable that we couldn't see anything at all. I was rooted to the spot like I had been sunk into a tar pit. In utter blackness you lose any sense of orientation, and I was scared to knock over shelves or even worse, get lost in a tunnel. But within seconds you could see tiny beacons of light emerging everywhere around. The people of Cooper Pedy were obviously used to power cuts and pulled flashlights out of their purses. Everyone had one, everyone but us, of course. They all went about their business as if nothing had happened, and this was completely normal. We felt like burglars taking things off shelves in this blackness. But at the register there was a line of little shining rays, each representing a person who also burgled. The shopkeeper sat at a desk with a mining lamp on her head, calculating everything with pen and paper. She told us this was a daily occurrence because the power station would be turned off once it got too hot. The restaurants offered romantic candlelight dinners with a cold buffet. No one was the least bothered. Fascinating how flexible you become when you have to. There was no impossible or I can't do it in this place. Life certainly is what you make of it, and that depends on your attitude. An attitude is a choice. You can totally choose to live a happy life or a miserable one. People here had chosen to be happy, no matter what was thrown at them. As odd as they were a hardy bunch. Sleeping underground, I thought, would feel like sleeping in a coffin, with a silence that was deafening and a darkness that was threatening. But I felt surprisingly peaceful, at least until I heard the tiny little scuffling feet of cockroaches on the rocky ground. They soon crawled all over us. Some of them, I am glad to report, did not survive the night. The next morning we had breakfast with a gazillion of flies, then waved goodbye to this incredible place and made our way further inland. We stopped at an Aboriginal art center for a bathroom break. No doubt Ted had some sort of contract with them. The scene was grim. It was depressing to see what one of the oldest living cultures on Earth had become since the European invasion. I had hoped for vibrant, proud people. In the cities we had seen Aborigines, of course, but they were mainly drunk, sitting in corners. I had thought that this was just the influence of those cities. I felt lost too amidst too many human beings, but now I feared that no matter where I went, I would only encounter sad shadows of what was once an awe-inspiring culture. I felt like a voyeur in this place, like those slum tourists in India. The difference was that I didn't want to be there. All that was here were people trying to sell their wares to anyone who would pay. They showed me no sense of authenticity, no pride in their situation or love of their work. Of course, this is only how I perceived it at 23 years of age. I wonder what I would see now should I ever go back. Back then I was taken aback by what I found. I am not even sure what I was expecting. Perhaps people who travel to Germany and find out that most Germans do not wear lederhosen feel the same letdown. I mean, I wasn't expecting a Disneyland version of Aboriginal culture. Well, perhaps somehow I was. I hoped to meet someone with a strong cultural identity, so I might be inspired to find my own. It was clear that I would not find that someone here. I would only find heartbreak and soul-crushing sadness. I did not want to see that. I had enough of my own. Dealing with several identities that people put on me, none of which I wanted to be, I had enough to solve. I didn't need the weight of others on top of my own. Here, I just wanted to be, no expectations. I am sure the people at the Arts Center wanted the same, but were caught between identities just like I was, or worse. They had to switch between worlds. I only had to switch between families, each of which had different demands and expectations I both wanted and did not want to fulfill. I was glad to leave this place. At 11:30 a.m. that day, we crossed another state border, entering the Northern Territory. Crossing state borders was still such a novelty that I had to write date and time into my diary. At 11:45 a.m., Todd threw us all out of the bus and demanded we all search for firewood for the night. And as he had the key to the only way out, we obliged. Apparently, where we would camp, no firewood was to be found, so we had to collect it here and strap it to the roof of the bus. At 3 p.m., we thought we had seen Uluru for the first time, or Ayers Rock, to use a name more familiar to most. But apparently this monolith in front of us wasn't the Holy Mountain, but a mere copy. Well, not a copy as such, but a similar looking rock with less gigantic proportions. This one was called Mount Connor. I was glad it wasn't the famous Uluru, because that would have left me disappointed. Mount Connor did not have the air of mystique and ancient wisdom about it that I expected or hoped for of Uluru. At 4 p.m., the real Uluru made its first magnificent appearance. I have no idea why, but I had goosebumps like a 14-year-old at the first date. This rock had a bigger effect on me than most human encounters. I hoped I wouldn't turn into someone who fell in love with the Empire State Building and wanted to marry it. At 7 p.m., we were at our campground close to Uluru. It was a great time to steal away from the group and try to catch one of the jaw-dropping sunsets I knew from travel magazines, during which Uluru changes color and delivers a stunning spectacle for onlookers. Full of expectation, I stood in the desert waiting when Mother Nature ruined the spectacle for me. Huge, inflated rain clouds barged in front of the sun and hid it from view before bursting out an incredible downpour that left me soaked to my skin in seconds. While I was utterly disappointed, I could see all the locals in the distance running out in delight, cameras clutched in hand. This was such a rare event out here that it left people living here buzzing. Apparently, I was witnessing a once-in-a-lifetime desert rain extravaganza, a chance not many people are lucky enough to enjoy. But enjoy I did not. At the time, I just wanted to see the red glowing monolith, take the postcard perfect photo, and feel all deserty. How can you feel that way when you're wet? Also, in a land where rain was a rarity, it rained a lot, I thought. The rain was literally stalking me. It rained all night long, and our painfully collected and transported firewood got as soaked as our swags. Everyone was trying to find dry spots to sleep. Some people of the group laid down on picnic tables that had a little roof. Others stayed on the bus. In the end, we retreated to sleep in the campground's shower building, along with the entire population of spiders. In the wee hours of the morning, I got up, careful not to step on fellow rain refugees, and stole away by myself again, determined to catch the sunrise over Uluru. But the rain clouds were still present and bathed my magic monolith in a dull grey light. To my astonishment, Uluru had transformed from a ragged dry rock into something that looked like a colossal fountain. Waterfalls, big and small, were bubbling and streaming down the mountain everywhere you looked. The most famous Australian landmark was unrecognizable. It was absolutely marvelous. Now I felt fortunate to be present during this most special time and witness something nothing short of a miracle. Once all passengers were awake, we drove right up to Uluru. It was still raining. You could hear the sound of the water plunging down. I waded in knee-deep water on what must have been a dirt trail, trying to walk as much as possible of this holy place, to suck up every ounce of strength and power it was willing to share with me. There's something indestructible at ancient places like this. Something all the science in the world can neither explain nor ruin. Something indescribable, sorry, not indestructible. The Olgas, or rightly Catatuta, is a group of large domed rock formations about 16 miles from Uluru. Catatuta is made up of 36 domes. The legends surrounding Uluru are also true here, and according to one, the great snake king Wanambi lives on the summit of the highest dome. But most of the dreaming and laws are kept secret from outsiders. What I do know is that Catatuta is home to spirit energy and dreaming. Dreaming or dream time is the Aboriginal understanding of the world, its creation and its laws of existence. For the Anangu people, the Aboriginal tribe living here, Catatuta is a holy sacred place. I was invading as an outsider. It was clear to me, yet I was drawn to it like a moth to the light. It was a siren's law pulling me amidst the red rocks. A few of us decided to do the Valley of the Winds walk as it started to rain again. We found ourselves on the rocky platform in the middle of a ring of huge smooth rocks. So we were surrounded by those high red unscalable boulders, and more red rock was underneath us. Above us was dark grey sky that was spitting tons of water relentlessly onto us. After about 3 minutes, little waterfalls flowed gently down the rock ring and onto the platform. Those tiny lazy waterfalls soon transformed into big energetic ones, and the solid ring of rock became one big dynamic round waterfall that we stood in the middle of. To this day my body reacts with goosebumps thinking of this unreal spectacle of nature. It was as if the desert was an actor on stage taking on a new role, wearing a new mask every few hours. The rock ring had only 2 small gaps through which paths wound themselves down from the platform. One led into the Valley of the Winds that we would never reach. The other led back out of this place of dreaming and into the real, less mystical world. Those paths were now the only way for the water to escape from the rock platform we stood on. We basically stood in a big bowl with 2 cracks. Mesmerized, we stared at the display of nature's power until our wet ankles pulled us out of the trance and we realized that the rock bowl was filling up rather fast. It was time to leave. We had to go back the same way we came, simply because the drop wasn't as steep as the one into the Valley of Winds we would have been going to. Of course, the path was now a bubbling creek, and the way out of the waterfall rock ring had become a waterfall itself. Who would have thought our desert experience would turn into whitewater rafting? We scooted down the little waterfall and were spit out of the rock bowl into a small river that had been the path. Clambering out of the rock ring, all the time trying to hold my precious camera over my head to keep it dry, was challenging and comical. Needless to say, it didn't work either, and my camera was left drying in the bus for the remainder of our bus journey. Nevertheless, my endorphins danced the samba, and I felt exhilarated by this adventure. The feeling triggered when you are not quite safe are second to none. People living a completely predictable life have no idea what they're missing. We slept another night on picnic tables, benches, the shower, and the bus. One more time, I tried my luck to catch a sunrise over Uluru. That morning, the sun did rise without any rain clouds. The sunrise was beautiful in delicious pinks and lavenders. But it was not behind Uluru at all, it was opposite. I stood on the wrong side of the mountain. I wasn't disappointed about not getting the sunrise I had longed for, but furious about the fact I had gotten up at 4:30 a.m. for it. But as I was up, and Mum too, we decided to walk the Mala walk around Uluru. The rain had stopped completely, and the rising sun was drying up all the waterfalls, creeks, and little lakes that had formed in the days before. Tomorrow or the day after, there would be no sign of the torrential rains we had witnessed, and the desert would be desert again. Right now, the landscape looked so unreal, so otherworldly. We saw lots of Aboriginal rock art in the crevices and folds of Uluru. There were caves and holes, overhangs and rock paths that were shaped like waves. You could stand underneath, waiting for the stony wave to bury you. Some parts of the rock had holes like a cheese, some were orange skin-like, others had black streaks running straight through the red surface. From far away, Uluru looked like one big smooth red rock, but close up one could see all the different faces of this giant. Like a human being, this monolith had many roles to play and masks to wear. Kings Canyon was the last outback rock formation we would visit on this trip. First, we built our camp on the designated campground for Kings Canyon. To our delight, it had a pool. And as if we hadn't been wet enough these past days, we threw ourselves into it right away. After only half a day of scorching desert temperatures on a bus without air conditioning, when the only way to regulate your body temperature was to stick your head out of the window and catch some air like a dog, I was sweaty like a horse. It wasn't raining that night, so we could use the showers for their actual purpose. Of course, one had to share them with spiders and bugs the size of plates. While showering, I not once closed my eyes. I watched and analyzed every movement of those creatures to determine whether one was about to jump on me or whether I would be able to get out of the cubicle without having to shoo one out of the way and risk being snapped at. The huntsman spiders were in fact so big they hissed at you. They actually hissed. Uh, they are one of the only spiders with lungs. In theory, they could blow out a birthday candle if ever someone would make them a cake. During our campfire, even more enormous and creepy creatures joined our company, as if they too searched for a dry place. I was glad that Ted had borrowed tents for the night because I wasn't willing to sleep next to a huntsman. I would have even preferred a dingo. In scorching heat, we walked through Kings Canyon the next day and wished the rain would return once more, but it did not. This is how bread must feel when it is baked in an oven, except it doesn't have to move. But nor the heat. No, but not the heat, not the fact that my camera still did not work, and not the fact that I was dying of thirst because once again I wasn't carrying enough water, dampened my elated spirit. This corner of the earth was so unutterably beautiful. An arrangement of red brows of hills, accurately aligned, lay in front of me like macaroons on a cookie tray. They were so exactly placed that one had to question the coincidence of their creation. This looked like someone had planned this landscape. Whatever you believe in will either be strengthened or weakened by laying eyes on what was called the Lost City. I would have probably named this formation Burnt Cookies. In the deepest and widest crevice of Kings Canyon, the impossible was once more a reality. You have to imagine Kings Canyon as a meager landscape of hot, red, and lifeless rocks. It was so hot that you'd see the heat flicker in the air. No plants, no animals in sight. But through a crevice in this hostile, irresistible landscape wound a little river. Lining its banks was a virgin forest. A leftover oasis from primeval times was granting life for all creatures. If I hadn't climbed down to touch the water and the forest, I would not have believed my eyes and would have dubbed it a trick of the heat, a mirage. But it was real. In this crevice existed an entirely self-contained world, so far removed from anything desert-like that any early explorers who reported it must have been called liars. It was enchanting, a place that cannot be but was. Our last time on the bus brought us to Alice Springs, the city in the desert, the middle of Australia. That a settlement of any kind can persist in this environment testifies to the tenaciousness, endurance, and stubbornness. In Cooper Pedy, I started questioning of my belief that every city is the same. Now I revoked it completely. Maliciously, one could say that only fools keep a city alive in this environment, but affectionately one could say that only dreamers do. I guess in reality it was a mixture of fools and dreamers who were able to create something livable out of nothing. A lively place in the desert dust welcomed us with open doors. I wandered the red streets for quite some days to suck in the dreamlike atmosphere. Everything was slower here, much slower. I enjoyed the life in slow motion. But after a few days I had to say goodbye to this place, like I had to say goodbye to everything on this trip. I left a piece of my heart there, like I did at every place that touched my soul. This way the memories stay alive and colored. But life has to be lived forwards and not backwards, so I moved on.